Crisis finds everyone. Resilience feels rare. We all face moments when the world shakes, and we wish for an inner strength that doesn't break. 2,000 years ago, a philosophy was built for this. It offered a toolkit for mental fortitude. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius guided an empire through war and plague. He wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the promise of Stoicism. So here are 20 mental disciplines from that ancient wisdom. They are for forging a character that stays steady in any storm. They aren't rigid rules, they're practical exercises for the mind. They transform how you see challenge. How do you define your own strength when everything feels uncertain? The first rule for getting through any kind of trouble is this one distinction. It's the foundation of Stoic peace. It stops you from worrying endlessly about things you can't change. That's the dichotomy of control. Epictetus taught this. He was a philosopher, a former slave. He put it very clearly. Some things are up to us, he said, and some things are not up to us. Our opinions are up to us, our impulses, what we want, what we avoid. Anything that's our own doing, not up to us, is our body, our property, our reputation, our position. Anything that's not our own doing, the freedom in that is immediate. It takes all your energy away from what you can't command, and it puts it on the one thing you always can, your own inner space, your choice, your judgment. Think about a modern problem, losing your job suddenly, the event itself, the company's choice, the economy. Those aren't in your direct control. What other people think, the first shock, the feeling it's unfair. Those are outside your command too. What's left inside your fortress, your response, the work you do to fix your resume, the mindset you pick, whether it's defeat or a decision to recalibrate. The steps you take to network, to apply for new things, the discipline you keep in your daily routine. If you focus all your effort there, on that inner realm of action and attitude, you stop being a victim of circumstance. You start being the author of your comeback. So take a moment, look at your own life, find one current worry, big or small. Then, in your mind, draw a line down the middle of it. On one side, list everything that's outside your control. On the other side, list every single action, every thought, every choice that's still within your power. That act of sorting isn't passive acceptance. It's the first active step. It's strategic focus. That's where unbreakable resilience starts. Acceptance. It's a radical embrace of everything that happens, not with resignation but with a kind of gratitude, because you start to see it as necessary fuel for your own development. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this in his private notes. He said a blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything thrown into it. He was training himself to see every event, even the painful ones, as the material. The material for building his own inner fire. And then centuries later, Nietzsche echoed it. He wrote that his formula for human greatness was Amor, Fati. That one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. But how do you practice that? It starts with a shift in your internal narrative. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me, you learn to ask, what is this happening for me? What strength is it inviting me to build? What perspective is it forcing me to see? There are examples in history. Take Seneca. He was exiled to Corsica by the Emperor Claudius, sent away from Rome, from the political and intellectual center. It was a devastating blow, yet in his exile he wrote some of his most profound letters. His works on nature. He used the isolation, the hardship, not as an end, but as the raw material for deep reflection and for his writing. He didn't just endure his fate, he engaged with it, wrestled meaning from it, and in a real sense made it his own. You can see a modern version of this in a career pivot forced by a layoff, or a personal project born from a period of illness, the setback closes one door. And in the stillness that follows, you find a window you never noticed. The key is to look for the hidden advantage, not with naive optimism, but with a determined, almost artistic eye. What can you build with these new, unexpected materials? So here's a small exercise. Think of one recent setback, a disappointment that still feels fresh. A missed opportunity, a conflict, a plan that fell apart. Now, instead of replaying the frustration, ask one question. What hidden advantage or lesson could this contain? Maybe the failed plan taught you a crucial detail about your own process. Maybe the conflict revealed a boundary you needed to set. Maybe the disappointment freed up time for something more aligned with who you are becoming. This isn't about pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about deciding the pain will not be wasted. It's about choosing to see every event, especially the difficult ones, as an indispensable thread in the fabric of your strength, when you can look at the very thing you wished had never happened and find a way to be thankful. Thankful for the person it is forcing you to become. Then you've moved from enduring life to engaging with it on its own terms. That's the unshakable ground of Amor Fati. People worry about looking strong in a crisis. The Stoics, they only cared about being strong from the inside. That's the fourth rule, and it's a sharp turn. We're usually taught to operate a different way. Our world is built on reputation, likes, follows, public perception. The ancient Stoics saw that as a trap, a dangerous one. They argued the only thing worth cultivating is your character. Your virtue, your integrity, everything else is just noise, and it's noise you can't control. Epictetus lived a life that went from slavery to teacher. He had no patience for other people's opinions. He put it bluntly, it's foolish to wish to be well thought of by people you yourself don't think well of. There's power in that. Why give the keys to your self-worth to a jury whose judgment you don't respect? He taught that being praised or blamed by others means you've handed over your inner compass. You've outsourced your peace. When you tie your worth to your reputation, you make yourself a prisoner. You're constantly adjusting your behavior, filtering your words, managing impressions. All based on a reflection in a mirror you don't even hold. That concern for image is a massive drain. It pulls energy away from the only arena where you have real sovereignty. Your own choices, your own actions. Imagine you're in a team meeting. A major project error comes to light, an error you had a hand in. The immediate, reputation-focused instinct is to deflect, to shift blame or downplay the issue. You're thinking about looking competent, reliable, in control, but the character-focused response is different. It's to stand up, take clear ownership of your part, and immediately focus on the solution. In the short term, the first path might preserve your image. But in the long term, it erodes trust. It teaches people you are not accountable. The second path, the harder one, might feel like a short-term hit to your reputation. But it builds something unshakable, a reputation for integrity, and that's just a byproduct. The real prize is your strengthened character. So here's a question. When have you acted, even in a small way, to protect your image instead of your principles? Maybe you stayed silent when you should have spoken up to avoid conflict. Perhaps you agreed with a group opinion you privately disagreed with, just to fit in. What would change if, from now on, you focused solely on the latter? On your principles, your decisions would become simpler, though not easier. Your energy would be directed inward, to the calibration of your own moral compass. Not outward to the shifting winds of public opinion. You'd stop asking what will people think, and start asking what is the right thing to do. That inner alignment is what makes a person unbreakable. Because when crisis hits and all external validations crumble, the person who has built their fortress on virtue still has a home. They are not left homeless by the loss of applause. Imagine rising above where you are right now, seeing it as just a small part of something much larger. That's the fifth rule, the view from above. It's a mental exercise. It shrinks anxiety down to its proper size. The Stoics knew our problems feel enormous because we're standing so close to them. This practice is about taking a deliberate step back. To see your life, your worries, your entire moment in history from a distance, a cosmic distance. Marcus Aurelius used this constantly. In his private writings, he'd remind himself to look at things from above. He'd picture the bustling forums, the homes, the farms, and then, in his mind's eye, he'd pull back. He'd see it all as if from a great height. He wrote that you can rid yourself of many useless things that disturb you because they lie entirely in your imagination. And you gain ample space by comprehending the whole universe in your mind. He was training himself to see the brief, fleeting nature of human affairs. Against the backdrop of eternity, this isn't about dismissing your feelings as unimportant. It's about contextualizing them. It's the difference between being a single actor on a brightly lit stage, believing the entire play hinges on your next line, and being the person who steps into the theater balcony. From there, you see the whole set, the other actors, the audience, the fact that this is just one performance in a long-running show. The pressure evaporates. You gain clarity, so how do you apply this when stress feels immediate? Think of a personal conflict that's consuming your thoughts, a disagreement with a colleague, a tense family discussion. Now practice the zoom out first in time. Ask yourself, how will I feel about this in 1 month? How about in 1 year? Will it even be a memory in 10 years? The answer is usually a calming no. Then zoom out in space. See your home, your street, your city from a satellite's view. See the countless other lives unfolding, each with their own private struggles and joys. Your specific problem is one among billions. Finally, zoom out in history. Consider that every person who has ever lived has faced disappointment, fear, and loss. You are part of a long, unbroken human chain navigating the same fundamental experiences. Your particular chapter is unique to you, but the themes are ancient. This perspective doesn't make your challenge disappear, but it drains the drama and the panic from it. It turns a crushing boulder back into the manageable stone it always was. The next time you feel overwhelmed by a work deadline or a personal worry, pause for just 30 seconds, close your eyes, and take that mental flight. See the situation from above, from the future, from the scale of human history. Then ask yourself quietly, how will this truly matter in the grand scheme? The stillness that follows that question is where resilient action begins. It's the space where you stop reacting to a crisis as if it's the whole world, and start responding to it as a person who understands their place within a vast, enduring story. The Stoics thought about death often, not to scare themselves, but to light a fire under their life. That's the 6th rule, Memento Mori, remember you must die. It sounds harsh, unsettling, but the point isn't fear, it's the opposite. It's a tool for clarity, for vitality. If you keep in mind that life is finite, you stop wasting time. You start to see what matters and what's just noise. This idea runs through all of Stoicism. Seneca wrote about it in his letters. He told his friend to live each day as a complete life. He said we act like mortals in what we fear, and like immortals in what we desire. We're afraid of death, but we live like we have endless tomorrows. We put off our best plans, we put up with small annoyances, we chase empty goals. Remembering death fixes that illusion. It brings a gentle urgency to now. Seneca said life is long if you know how to use it. Memento Mori is how you learn to use it. So how do you work with this without it feeling grim? You make it a daily mental exercise. Not a focus on the end, a lens for the present. One way is to start your morning, maybe while making coffee or taking a first quiet breath with one thought. This could be my last day, not as a fear, as a real question. If this were my last day, how would I spend it? What conversation would I have? What kindness would I give without waiting? What small worry would I let go? The effect is immediate. It acts as a filter. It clears the clutter, the minor irritations, the compulsive checking. The hours lost to distraction. Calling a loved one becomes more important than scrolling. That creative project you've put off feels more urgent than an email. You speak more honestly, you listen more closely, you choose what aligns with your values. This isn't living in a state of emergency, it's living with intention. A flower is beautiful because it won't last. A great book is gripping because it has a last page. Your life has a limit. That's what makes your choices matter. So here's a prompt, not to dwell on the end, to light up your path now. If you knew for certain this week was your last, what would you stop doing right away? And what would you start? The answers to those two questions are a map away from what drains you, toward what defines you. Memento Mori doesn't mean thinking about death all the time. It means letting that awareness teach you how to live all the time, with purpose, with gratitude, and with no time to spare on what doesn't matter. Stoic strength is something you build ahead of time. It's built through small acts of self-denial. That's the seventh rule, voluntary discomfort. It's training for the soul. The idea is simple. If you choose a little hardship when you don't have to, you inoculate yourself against the fear of it. You learn you can handle more than you think. You learn that comfort is a preference, not a necessity. This practice has deep roots. It goes back to the Cynics who inspired the early Stoics. There was a teacher, Musonius Rufus. He was a strong advocate. He taught that just as athletes train for competition, we have to train for life. He said, practice yourself in little things, and then proceed to greater. Seneca echoed this. He advised living as if you were poor, even while you have wealth. Wear coarse clothes, eat plain food. Sleep on a hard bed. Why? Not for show, but to prove to yourself that fortune's gifts aren't the source of your peace. The goal is to break that unconscious dread of loss. If you've never felt cold, the first chill of adversity feels like a catastrophe. But if you've stood in a cold shower by choice, or taken a brisk walk on a winter day without bundling up, you know the sensation. You've felt your body adjust. You've experienced your mind saying, this is temporary, I am fine. That knowledge is power. It translates directly to life's larger hardships. A financial setback feels less terrifying if you've practiced living simply. A period of intense work feels more manageable if you've practiced pushing through fatigue. The modern applications are everywhere. They're accessible. You don't need to sleep on the floor. Start with something small. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Skip a meal and sit with the hunger. Observe it without panic. Leave your phone at home during a short errand. Drive in silence instead of turning on music or a podcast. Each of these is a tiny rebellion against the constant pursuit of ease. It's a reclaiming of your sovereignty over your own senses and impulses. So here's a challenge for this week. Choose one small, daily comfort you usually take for granted. It could be that second cup of coffee, the constant background noise of a streaming service, or always taking the most convenient parking spot. For one day, or even for one instance, voluntarily forego it. Don't suffer dramatically, just observe. Notice the initial urge, the slight friction, and then the calm that follows when you realize you are perfectly okay without it. That moment of observation where you see your own resilience in action is where true fortitude is forged. It teaches you that your well-being isn't held hostage by external conditions. You carry it within you, tested and proven, ready for whatever comes next. The eighth rule is about where suffering starts. It doesn't start with the event itself. It starts with the label we put on it right away. That's the discipline. Judge less, observe more. The Stoics saw this. Our turmoil isn't usually about the raw fact. It's about the story we tell ourselves the very next moment. And that story is a judgment. We can pause that. Epictetus begins his handbook with this. He says what upsets people isn't things themselves, it's their judgments about those things. Death isn't dreadful, otherwise it would have seemed dreadful to Socrates. The dread is in our judgment that death is dreadful, so when we're upset, we shouldn't blame another person. We should blame our own judgments. There's a gap, a small one, between something happening and our response. In that gap is our freedom, but most of us live as if that gap isn't there. Something happens and we instantly categorize it: good, bad, unfair, a disaster. This traffic is ruining my day. That email from my boss means I'm failing. This rain has spoiled everything. Those aren't facts, they're interpretations, judgments loaded with feeling, and once that judgment is made, our reactions follow it automatically. Like they're on a track, the practice is to step into that gap, to withhold the verdict, to become, for a moment, just an observer, describe the event in neutral terms. Like a scientist would, not this traffic is terrible, but my car has stopped moving on the highway. There are red brake lights ahead. Not my boss is attacking me. But my boss sent an email with 3 points of critical feedback. Not this rain ruined my picnic, but water is falling from the sky onto the park tables. It sounds simple, maybe silly, but the effect is different. It separates you from the emotional storm. It creates space, and in that space, you get your agency back. You can choose your judgment wisely. From that neutral place, you can ask what constructive interpretation is available. The traffic jam isn't ruining your day. It's 20 unexpected minutes of quiet, a chance to listen to music or just sit with your thoughts. The critical email isn't a verdict on your worth. It's data, information on how to improve a specific piece of work. The rain isn't a spoiler, it's a change of plans, an invitation to find a different, maybe cozier, way to spend the afternoon. So here's an exercise. Catch yourself making a snap negative judgment. It could be about anything: a slow line at the store, a piece of news, a comment from someone. The moment you feel that flare of frustration, pause, just for a few seconds, strip away the judgment, describe the situation out loud in purely factual terms. Say only what a video camera would record. In that moment of pure observation, you'll feel the emotional charge start to fade. You're no longer a victim of the event. You're a witness to it, and a witness has the power to decide what the story means. That's how you build an inner citadel, not by trying to control the world, but by mastering the space between what happens and what you decide it means. Unbreakability shows up in the next right action, not in some grand plan for the future. When a crisis comes, the mind wants to race. It jumps ahead to all the terrible things that could happen, or it gets stuck just replaying what went wrong yesterday. That scattering of your attention, it's exhausting. It makes you feel powerless. The 9th Stoic rule addresses that. Your duty is in the present moment. It's a call to gather all that scattered attention and pour it into the one manageable task right in front of you, to do your duty and to do it well right now. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. He was managing wars, he was managing plagues, and he constantly reminded himself of this focus. He wrote that you should concentrate every thought and action like a Roman on the task at hand. Do it with dignity, with sympathy, with independence, with justice, and put aside all other thoughts. He wasn't asking himself to solve the entire war that day. He was asking himself to handle the next dispatch, the next meeting, the next decision, and to handle it with integrity. That's how you move a mountain. Not by staring at the summit, by placing one stone, then another stone. Think of a caregiver in a difficult situation. The long-term prognosis, the financial worries, the emotional weight, that's the overwhelming whole. It can paralyze anyone, but the person who stays functional, who remains unbroken, they do it by narrowing the lens. They don't think about the next year. They think about the next hour. Their duty is to prepare a meal right now, to sit and hold a hand for these 10 minutes, to make one phone call to a doctor. By doing each of these small, present duties with care, they navigate something that feels unnavigable. They find strength not in having all the answers, but in doing the next right thing. This applies to any overwhelming challenge, a project at work that seems impossibly large, a personal goal that feels miles away. The anxiety comes from looking at the entire distance. The peace comes from looking at the ground beneath your feet. Your duty is not to finish the project today. Your duty is to write this one email, to draft this one section, to have this one conversation, and to do that single thing well. So here's a practical question for this very moment. What's the one small, virtuous thing you can do right now that fits your role, your values? Not the big, life-changing move, the next right action. It could be finishing the task you've been avoiding for the last hour. It could be sending a message of thanks to someone. It could be taking 5 minutes to truly listen to someone in your home without distraction. Identify it, and then, for just the next few minutes, let your entire world shrink to that single point of focus. Do it with your full attention, as if it were the most important duty in the world, because in this moment it is. That's how you build an unbreakable present. And a resilient future, that's just a series of those well-attended presents laid down carefully, one after the other. The Stoic doesn't ask for an easy life. They ask for the strength to see the difficulty itself as the path. That's the 10th rule. It's a complete reframing. An obstacle isn't something blocking your way. It is the way. This is where philosophy becomes action. It's the art of the turn, using resistance as propulsion. Marcus Aurelius gave the clearest expression of this. He wrote in his private journal, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He was training his mind to stop seeing barriers as stop signs, to start seeing them as the very terrain he was meant to cross, the raw material for building his character. Think about how we normally approach a goal. We map out a straight line. We want a clear, smooth path. And when a boulder appears on that line, we see it as a problem. We get frustrated. We might try to go around it, or we give up. The Stoic approach is different. They look at that boulder and ask, what if this isn't a detour? What if climbing this boulder is the point? What if the strength I gain from the climb is the real goal, not just getting to the other side? History is full of this principle in action. Consider an inventor facing a critical limitation, a shortage of a vital material. That limitation forces a creative leap. It becomes the catalyst for a simpler, more elegant solution, a more successful one. The obstacle didn't block innovation, it directed it. It forced a turn that led to a better destination. On a personal level, think of someone who faces a physical setback, an injury that prevents their usual sport. That obstacle, that forced pause, can become the way to a new discovery. It might lead to exploring a different form of movement. It might cultivate patience, a deeper listening to the body. It might open up time for a neglected creative pursuit. The injury isn't celebrated, but the resilience and adaptation it demands become a new kind of strength. The person doesn't just recover, they transform. So how do you practice this? Look at a current obstacle in your own life. It doesn't have to be monumental. It could be a difficult person at work, a tight budget, a skill you're struggling to learn. Now, instead of lamenting it, interrogate it. Ask yourself, what specific virtue could this obstacle be a training ground for? If it's the difficult person, perhaps it's a drill for patience, for maintaining your calm under pressure. If it's the tight budget, it's a masterclass in resourcefulness, distinguishing wants from needs. If it's the skill you can't grasp, it's a lesson in perseverance and humility. By shifting your view, you stop fighting the obstacle. You start working with it. You use its rough surface to sharpen your tools. That's the unbreakable mindset. It doesn't see a wall and despair. It sees a wall and begins to look for the handholds. Your crisis isn't something separate. The Stoics saw it as part of a web, a connected system. That's the 11th rule, Sympatheia. It's this recognition that everything is linked. Your breath, your struggle, the tree outside, a distant star, all part of one living system. And that perspective, it counters the loneliness, the feeling of being alone in your pain. Sympatheia reminds you you're never truly separate. You're a point in a network of cause and effect. a citizen of a universe. This idea was central for them. Marcus Aurelius kept coming back to it. He wrote to himself, meditate often on how all things are interconnected, mutually dependent, because in a sense, everything is woven together. And because of that, all things have a natural liking for each other. He saw the world as a single city, a shared home for all rational beings. That's Stoic cosmopolitanism. It means you're not just a citizen of your town or your nation. You're a citizen of the cosmos. Your duties go beyond your immediate circle. They extend to the whole human family. Even to the natural world. How does that help in a crisis? It moves your focus from a narrow story about me to a broader story about us. Self-pity thrives in isolation. It tells you your burden is unique, but Sympatheia shows you something else. Your challenge, however personal, is a variation, a version of a universal human experience. Others have faced it, others are facing it now, and your response can ripple outward. Think of a community facing a shared hardship, a severe storm that knocks out power for days. Afterward, it's easy to feel alone in the dark, worried about your own food, your own comfort, but someone who embodies Sympatheia sees the larger web. They check on an elderly neighbor, they share generator power for a family's medical equipment, they help organize clearing fallen branches, and in the act of contributing to the whole, something happens. Their personal distress lessens, they feel purpose, they feel connection. The obstacle becomes a catalyst. It strengthens the very web they're part of. Their resilience becomes communal. This applies to smaller challenges too. A period of professional uncertainty can feel like a private burden, but if you viewed it through interconnectedness, your struggle to find clarity might lead you to share resources with others in your field. Your learning could become mentoring for someone just starting out. By framing your journey as part of a collective human effort to grow, you transform a personal trial into a contribution. So here's a prompt to consider. Look at your current challenge, the one that feels most pressing, and ask, how could my response to this, the strength I build from it, also benefit my wider community? Could the patience I'm learning make me a better parent or partner? Could the resourcefulness I'm developing be shared to help a local group? Could the empathy born from my struggle let me see and support someone else's silent battle? When you see your life as a thread in a grand tapestry, you stop trying to cut yourself free from the difficult knots. You start weaving with them, adding your pattern to the strength of the whole. That shift from isolation to participation, that's where loneliness ends and unbreakable solidarity begins. The world outside can storm all it wants. The Stoic builds something inside, a kind of fortress. Nothing out there can get in. That's the 12th rule. Guard your inner citadel. It's really the point of all the other disciplines. Your mind isn't an open field. It's a walled city. The gates are your judgments, what you want, what you push away, and you're the one standing guard there. Life's chaos, the criticism, the loss, the sudden change, that's just the weather outside. It can rage, it can thunder, but it doesn't come in, not unless you open the gate and let it. Marcus Aurelius used that same idea. He wrote about people looking for retreats. In the country, by the sea, up in the hills, he said that's missing the point. When you can retreat into your own mind anytime, nowhere is quieter, nowhere is less crowded. Your inner citadel is that retreat. You build it brick by brick through the daily work of the other rules. The dichotomy of control shows you what's outside the walls and what's inside. The discipline of judgment trains you to guard the main gate, to question every impression that tries to get in. Voluntary discomfort that strengthens the walls proves they can hold. This citadel isn't an escape from reality. It's a place of sovereignty inside reality. Its peace doesn't come from silence, it comes from order. Take two people, same external event. Say the financial markets drop suddenly, wipes out some savings. The first person, their inner citadel is neglected. The gates are unguarded, the news crashes in like a flood, panic comes in, this story of total ruin, images of a bleak future, it all rushes through unchecked. Their inner world becomes a mirror of the outer chaos. They make decisions from fear, they spread anxiety to their family, they feel personally attacked by something that isn't personal at all. The second person has worked on that inner space. They hear the same news. They feel that initial shock, the stir of alarm, but they retreat to their citadel. They close the gate against the stampede of catastrophic thinking. From inside the walls they assess. They use the dichotomy of control. The market's movement is outside the wall. Their plan, their adjustments, their calm decision-making that's inside. They observe the event without letting the story of disaster define it. Their inner world stays ordered. Quiet, capable, from that calm center they can act with clarity, not react with terror. The external event was identical. The difference was the inner fortress. Its integrity, so you take a quiet moment to check the state of your own citadel. Walk its perimeter in your mind. Where are the walls strong? Where might there be a breach? Usually a breach isn't one big failure. It's a recurring thought pattern you've let pass the gate, unchallenged. Maybe it's imagining the worst possible outcome whenever things are uncertain. Maybe it's taking another person's mood personally, as a comment on your worth. Maybe it's a lingering resentment you revisit, letting it storm through your peace whenever it wants. Identify just one. That's the breach to repair today. Your practice is to become the sentry at that exact point. The next time that thought pattern approaches, see it for what it is. Not truth, a visitor seeking entry. You have the power to question it, to turn it away, and to return your attention to the quiet order inside your own walls. That's the unbreakable core. When everything outside is in flux, you have a place to stand, a place that can't be taken from you. The 13th rule is the reserve clause. It says the effort is yours to give, but the result is not yours to command. It's a simple formula that changes how you strive. You act with your whole heart. You give everything to the task, but you hold the final outcome with an open hand. Fate permitting, this is how the Stoic avoids the bitterness of unmet expectations. They separate the virtue of the action from the randomness of the result. Your job is to do your part with excellence. The universe's job is to deliver whatever it delivers, and you are prepared for either. Seneca wrote about this balance. He said, let all your efforts be directed to something, but let it be something that no force can prevent. Direct your effort toward the quality of your own action, your own intention. That's the thing no outside event can ever take from you. The outcome, the promotion, the win, the approval, those can be blocked by 1,000 unseen factors. But your integrity in the attempt, your focused effort, that remains yours untouched. This practice is an antidote to a very modern suffering. We tie our self-worth to results. We think if I get this job, I am worthy. If this project succeeds, I am capable. If this person says yes, I am lovable. That's a fragile way to live. It makes you a hostage to fortune. The reserve clause unties that knot. It says your worth is in the attempt, the quality of your preparation, the courage of your showing up. The result is simply information, data about the world, not a verdict on you. Think of an athlete training for the Olympics. They cannot control who else shows up, the judge's mood on the day, a sudden gust of wind, a competitor's lifetime best performance. What they control is their own training regimen, their diet, their sleep, their mental rehearsal. They give 100% to that controllable sphere. They pour their soul into it, and then, on the day of the event, they perform with that same full heart, but they have already made peace deep down with any result. Because they know their medal was earned in the pre-dawn hours of practice. The color of it is just a detail. You can apply this to something as common as a job interview. You research the company thoroughly, you prepare your stories, you practice your answers, you choose your clothes with care, you control all of that. You give it your full effort, then you walk into the room. You cannot control the interviewer's personal biases, the internal candidate you didn't know about. A sudden company hiring freeze announced that morning. The reserve clause means you walk in having already accepted both possible outcomes. You are mentally at peace with a yes or a no. This doesn't make you passive or unenthusiastic. It makes you free. It allows you to be fully present, authentic, and calm because you are not clutching desperately at the result. You are simply offering your best work. So take a goal you are striving for right now. It might be a creative project you're launching, a fitness target, a difficult conversation you need to have. Now, in your mind, apply the reserve clause. First, identify every single action within your control. List them. That's where your 100% effort goes. Then acknowledge every factor outside your control. The market's response, another person's reaction, plain old luck. And then rehearse this thought. I will give my all to my part, and I am at peace with whatever outcome emerges. This mental rehearsal is not wishing for failure. It's building a foundation of serenity that actually makes success more likely. Because when you are free from the fear of a specific result, you perform with a clarity and a grace that effort alone can never replicate. In a crisis, there's a choice you make. You can be the victim or you can be the student. That's the shift. It's moving from just suffering through something to learning from it. The victim asks, why is this happening to me? The student asks, what is this teaching me? And that change in the question, it changes everything. It turns the experience from a punishment into a kind of curriculum. It takes the agency that feels lost and puts it back in your hands. The Stoics saw the universe as ordered. They called it providence, a rational principle in everything. From that view, every experience, especially the hard ones, aren't random. They're lessons. They're the universe showing you your weaknesses, training your strengths. Epictetus knew hardship. He said difficulties are things that show what men are. And he taught that every challenge carries a gift, a chance to practice a virtue you might not have touched otherwise. This isn't saying hardship feels good. It's deciding the pain won't be wasted. It's mining the experience for the wisdom inside. Take a personal failure. Something you poured your heart into that fell apart. The victim's story is about blame and shame. It was unfair. The team let me down. I'm not good enough. That story ends in paralysis. The student story is different. It starts with the same disappointment, but then it gets curious. It asks specific things. What did this reveal about my planning? Maybe it taught you the need for clearer milestones. What did it show about my communication? Maybe you learned you assumed alignment where there wasn't any. What did it expose about my limits? It could have shown you where your skills need work or where you need to ask for help sooner. Each answer is a piece of data. A lesson, a tool for next time. This reframe changes the memory. It's not just a scar anymore. It's a library, a reference point you can go back to. That failed project didn't define you as a failure. It educated you as a practitioner. So here's a way to apply this. Think of one ongoing difficulty, a strained relationship, a financial pinch, a health worry, a feeling of anxiety. Set aside the victim questions for a moment. Put on the student's hat. Ask, what are 3 specific things this situation is teaching me? Be concrete. Not just patience, but patience in the form of listening without interrupting. Not just resilience, but resilience in the form of getting back to a routine after a setback. Not just humility, but humility in recognizing I can't control another person's choices, only my response. Write those 3 lessons down. That act of extraction is an act of power. It says that even in the storm, you're not just being acted upon, you're learning, you're growing, and that growth becomes the unbreakable core nothing can take from you. Words can become weapons we use against ourselves. Stoicism talks about the strength in measured speech. That's the 15th rule, speak little and speak well. It's a discipline of the tongue, and it saves a tremendous amount of your vital energy, your mental energy, your emotional energy. In a difficult situation, the instinct is to talk. To vent, to complain, to go over the problem out loud with anyone who'll listen. The Stoics saw that as a leak in your inner citadel. Every complaint you voice just reinforces the negative judgment you've already made. It carves the story of your victimhood deeper into your own mind, and gossip talking about others that pulls you into judging their character, which is outside your control. It scatters your focus, it can stain your integrity. Epictetus was direct about this. He said, "Let silence be your general rule, or say only what's necessary and in few words." He taught that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so we can listen twice as much as we speak. Seneca echoed that. He warned against the chatter of the crowd. He advised to be mostly a listener, to speak only when you must, and then to speak about things that truly matter. This mindful communication, it's not about being quiet from shyness. It's about choosing power over noise. Your words should be like deliberate actions. They should align with virtue. They should aim to improve the situation or offer clarity or express a necessary truth. Otherwise, silence is the stronger position. Think about a team in a crisis meeting. The project is behind, tension is high. One person spends their time voicing complaints, listing everything that went wrong, blaming other departments, lamenting the unfair workload. Their speech, it might feel cathartic in the moment, but it does nothing except amplify the chaos. It drains the room's energy. It entrenches a mindset of helplessness. Another person in that same meeting chooses to speak little and well. They listen intently. They absorb the facts. When they do speak, it's to ask a clarifying question or to offer one concise, solution-oriented statement. They might say, given the new deadline, I can take ownership of these 2 specific tasks if we adjust the support from marketing. Their words are few, but they're heavy with purpose. They cut through the noise and create a point of traction. The first person leaves the meeting exhausted. They poured their energy into describing the storm. The second leaves with energy preserved. They used a few chosen words to start building a shelter. Your speech is a mirror of your inner state. Frantic, scattered speech usually comes from a frantic, scattered mind. Calm, purposeful speech requires, and then projects a calm, purposeful mind. So here's a reflective prompt. For just 1 day, become an observer of your own words. Carry a small mental notebook without judgment, just notice. How often do you speak out of habit instead of necessity? How many sentences are devoted to complaining about circumstances you can't change? How many are spent in gossip, discussing the affairs of others? Don't try to stop it all at once. Just observe the frequency and the feeling. Notice the subtle energy cost of each unnecessary utterance. That awareness alone begins to change the habit. It creates a pause between the impulse to speak and the speech itself. And in that pause, you find the Stoic strength of silence, waiting to be chosen. A Stoic is defined by how they stand in a storm. That's the 16th rule. Your character isn't the weather, it's your posture in the rain. It's choosing integrity when the easier choice is right there. When we tie our identity to our circumstances, we become fragile. We say, I am my job title, I am my bank account, I am what happened to me. That hands your sense of self over to things you can't control. The Stoic pulls that identity back inside. They define themselves by their choices, their efforts, their virtues. The external conditions become just the backdrop. They're the setting, not the script. Marcus Aurelius thought about this. He wrote that the soul is dyed with the color of its thoughts and its actions. Notice that, not dyed by wealth or social standing or misfortune, but by its own internal activity, your repeated thoughts, your consistent actions, they're the pigments. They stain your character day by day, choice by choice. You are always painting your own portrait. The circumstances give you the canvas, maybe a rough one. But you hold the brush. Take 2 people in the same difficult spot, like financial hardship. The facts are the same: limited resources, bills, uncertainty. The first person, defined by circumstance, only sees the lack. Their actions come from resentment, a sense of injustice. They might cut corners, blame others, use small deceptions to get by. They see their character as a casualty of the situation. The second person, defining themselves by action, sees the same lack but asks a different question. Given this reality, how can I act well? Their actions might be marked by rigorous honesty, even when it costs, by diligent effort to find new work, however humble, by generosity with the little they have, sharing a meal with someone else in a bind. Their circumstance is poverty, but their character is resourcefulness. Dignity: an observer would see two different people, and they are. The circumstance didn't make their character, it revealed it, and then it became the gym where that character was exercised. Strengthened: this principle is a liberation. It frees you from the story of why you can't be better. It removes the excuse. You don't need perfect conditions to practice courage or justice or temperance. You need the next decision, the next interaction. The way you speak to a customer service agent on a bad call says more about your character than your job title. The patience you show a struggling child after a long day paints a truer portrait than any social media bio. Your character is built in these ordinary moments. The moments where no one is watching but you. So here's a question. If someone could only see your actions from the past week, not your job, your home, your things, just your raw choices, what would they conclude about your character? Separate from your life situation, would they see patience or irritability, integrity or convenience, generosity or self-absorption? The answer isn't to judge a past you can't change. It's to illuminate the present you, the artist holding the brush, to clarify the colors you choose to work with today, because your circumstances will shift with the wind. But the character you forge through your actions, that's the unbreakable sculpture you leave behind. The final test of Stoic resilience is to say thank you for the crisis itself. That's the 17th rule: practice gratitude for the lesson. It's not about being thankful when things go well. It's about finding a sincere point of thanks inside the hardship. Thanking fortune for the raw material it gave you, the material to build a stronger self. This is where Amor, Fati, and the student mindset come together. It rewrites the internal story from loss to gain. Seneca explored this in his letters, On Benefits. He argued the greatest benefits are often the hardest to see. A true friend, he wrote, is one who challenges you, who tells you hard truths. In the same way, a wise person receives a benefit from adversity, because adversity is the trainer. It puts you through drills you'd never choose, but that you need. He said we should greet hardship with the gratitude we'd show a stern, excellent teacher. Not for the pain, but for the competence it cultivates. To move this from idea to habit, start with a simple evening reflection. Look back on your day and identify one difficulty. It doesn't have to be big: a frustrating delay, a tough conversation, a moment of anxiety. Then take a quiet breath and verbally express gratitude for it. Be specific about the strength it invited you to use. If you faced a long commute, you might say, "Thank you for that traffic jam. It demanded patience, and it gave me 20 minutes of unexpected quiet to think." If you had a disagreement, you might say, "Thank you for that conflict. It demanded I clarify my own position and practice listening, even when I was upset." This act of thanking the challenge completes the cycle of learning. It signals to your mind that the event is now filed under education, not suffering. It transforms the memory from a wound into a reference point for future strength. So here's a small exercise. Think of a recent challenge that still occupies your thoughts. Now imagine writing a short thank you note to it. Just a few lines, address it directly. "Dear recent setback," or "Dear difficult week, thank you for teaching me the importance of asking for help sooner. Thank you for showing me where my planning was too rigid. Thank you for reminding me of my own resilience when I felt depleted. Formulating those sentences forces the reframe. It pulls the lesson out of the emotional fog and makes it concrete. It declares you are not defined by what happened to you, but by what you learned from it. And in that declaration, you claim the final piece of unbreakable ground, the ground of a mind that can find value and even thanks in the very fire that sought to temper it. The 18th rule is about retreat, withdrawing into yourself to restore its essential maintenance. After you've built that inner strength, after you've learned to see obstacles as the path, you also need to know when to step back inside. To just be, this isn't running away, it's a strategic return to your source, a pause to audit your judgments, to dust off your principles, to listen to the quiet voice of your own nature. Without this, even the strongest philosophy becomes just another thought in a crowded mind. Seneca understood this. He wrote that you must retreat into yourself as often as you can. You need to converse with yourself, he said. He who is everywhere is nowhere. Constant engagement with the outside world scatters your attention. It pulls you into other people's dramas, other people's judgments. Solitude is where you gather those pieces back, you realign, you remember who you are beneath the roles and reactions. The Stoics formalized this, morning and evening reflections. In the morning, you'd prepare your mind for the day, anticipating challenges, setting intentions for how you'd meet them with virtue. In the evening, you'd review. Not to judge yourself harshly, but to observe. Where did I follow my principles? Where did external noise sway me? What can I learn from today? This daily rhythm creates a space between you and the chaos. It ensures you're living your philosophy, not just discussing it. The modern world is engineered to prevent this retreat. Notifications, endless content, the pressure to be always available. So creating this space now is a conscious act of rebellion. It's reclaiming your attention, your most precious resource. The application can be simple. It doesn't require a cabin in the woods. It might be a daily 20-minute walk without headphones, letting your thoughts wander without an agenda. It could be sitting with a cup of tea for 5 minutes before the house wakes, just watching the light change. It might be keeping a small journal, not for grand prose, but for a few lines of honest check-in. How is my mind today? What judgment is weighing on me? Is it mine or did I borrow it? Another form is a scheduled digital detox. 1 evening a week or 1 hour a day where screens go dark. The silence that follows can feel strange at first, almost loud. But in that silence, your own inner voice begins to speak again. You remember what you care about, separate from what you're told to care about. So here's a small invitation. This week, schedule a 15-minute inner retreat. Put it in your calendar like any important meeting. Find a quiet spot or just stay in your car a few moments after you park. The only rule is no agenda, no goal of solving a problem. Your sole task is to sit quietly and observe the state of your own mind. Notice the thoughts that arise without grabbing onto them. Feel the rhythm of your breath. This isn't meditation for spiritual attainment. It's maintenance for mental clarity. It's the quiet recalibration that ensures when you step back into the storm, your compass is still pointing true. Your strength isn't just in how you act in the crisis, but in how you return to yourself between the waves. We don't experience the event itself. We experience the story we tell about it right as it happens. And the Stoic practice is to cut that story away. That's the 19th rule. It's a surgical act of perception, because when something happens, your mind doesn't just see it. It rushes to interpret, it layers on meaning from old hurts, it projects fears about what comes next, it dresses the bare fact in a whole costume drama. The discipline is to pause that, to see the event, not the story, to hold back your agreement from the dramatic version until you've seen the thing itself, plain. This goes back to Epictetus, that gap between impression and judgment. He said our first, raw impression is just data, a sound, a sight, some words, it's neutral. The suffering starts the next instant when we give our assent to a loaded story about what that data means. That story is where we lose our peace, so the practice is to become a master of seeing the raw data. To describe the world like a plain witness, not a novelist, take a terse email from a boss. The event, the pure fact, is this: a digital message of words appeared on a screen. The words state a need for a revision by end of day. That's it, that's the event, but the story we weave is immediate. The tone feels cold. They didn't say good morning. They must be angry. My work isn't good enough. This is a sign I'm on thin ice. Maybe I'll be let go. In seconds, a simple request becomes a narrative of professional ruin and personal rejection. The emotional storm that follows the anxiety, the defensiveness, that's a reaction to the story, not the event. The event was just text on a screen. The story is what hurts. The power in separating them is immense. When you can see the story as a separate, optional layer, you regain choice. You can decide, is this story true? Is it helpful, or is it just old fear pretending to be fact? Often, the bare event is manageable, even trivial. It's the epic we write around it that makes it feel catastrophic. So here's a practical exercise, a way to train this muscle of clear sight. Take a current stressor, something occupying your mind. Get a piece of paper. Draw 2 columns. Label the first column observable facts. In this column, write only what a video camera and a microphone would record. No emotions. No interpretations, no predictions, just the who, what, when, where, stripped of all drama. Label the second column my added narrative. Here you pour out the story. All the fears, the assumptions, the projections, the meanings you've attached to those bare facts. Write it all down. Seeing these 2 columns side by side is often startling. The facts column is usually short, simple, almost bland. The narrative column is a novel. It's filled with emotion and speculation, borrowed trouble. This visual separation makes the choice clear. You can choose to engage with the simple facts and address them with action, or you can choose to live inside the exhausting novel. One path leads to resolution, the other to rumination. The practice of writing it down begins to weaken the story's hold. It returns you to the solid, manageable ground of what actually is. Stoic unbreakability whispers enough. That's the 20th rule, the art of contentment with less. It's the ultimate freedom. When you learn to find sufficiency in what you already have, you disarm 2 great anxieties. The fear of losing what you have and the exhausting hunger for what you don't. This isn't a call to poverty. It's an invitation to master your desires. To discover that needing very little is a form of wealth. Seneca wrote about this. He was a man of immense means. He said true wealth is wanting little. He observed that poverty isn't about having little. It's about wanting more. He saw people who were rich in possessions but poor in peace, constantly tormented by the need to acquire. And to protect, his advice was to practice poverty periodically, use cheap furnishings, wear coarse clothes, eat simple food, not as a punishment, as a reminder. A reminder that your happiness does not reside in those external things. It resides in your ability to be at peace without them. This idea has deeper roots. With Diogenes the Cynic, he lived in a clay jar. He owned a single cloak, a staff, and a wooden bowl. Then he saw a child drinking water from his hands. And he threw away his bowl. He realized he had carried an unnecessary possession. His radical simplicity was a statement. He was demonstrating that the surest path to freedom was to eliminate every need that fortune could take away. The modern application isn't about giving everything away. It's about auditing your relationship with things. It's the mental peace of someone who finds deep joy in a home-cooked meal, or a walk in a public park, or a long, meaningful conversation. Their contentment is generated from within, from experience and connection. Contrast that with someone whose happiness is tied to luxury brands. The latest gadget, visible status symbols. Their joy is contingent, it's fragile. It depends on maintaining those external markers and upgrading them. The first person is unshakable because their source of good is internal and abundant. The second is perpetually vulnerable because their source is external and scarce. This practice builds a quiet security. When you are content with enough, a financial downturn becomes a manageable adjustment, not an existential threat. A missed promotion is a recalibration of path, not a demolition of your worth. A broken possession is an inconvenience, not a tragedy. You have built your home on the solid ground of your own character, not on the shifting sands of circumstance. So here is a final prompt. From these 20 disciplines, this week, identify one area of your life where you can practice contentment with enough. It could be with food, savoring a simple, nutritious meal without needing it to be extravagant. It could be with entertainment, finding richness in a book you already own. Instead of chasing the new release, it could be with your schedule, being fully present for an afternoon with no plans, instead of feeling you must fill it. Observe the subtle shift it brings, the slight lessening of background anxiety, the gentle sense of security that comes from knowing you have chosen to define your own enough. That choice, repeated, is the final brick in an unbreakable inner citadel. It means no outside force can dictate your peace because you have learned to generate it from within. From the simple, sufficient truth of your own existence. These 20 disciplines are one toolkit. They're not separate rules. They're connected practices for building a single, unbreakable character. From telling what you can control from what you can't, to finding the lesson in a hard moment, each one supports the others. They build a resilient way of seeing the world from the inside out. The core of Stoicism is clear. Resilience isn't a lucky trait. It's not something you're born with. It's an internal skill. You build it brick by brick through daily, deliberate practice. It's the quiet work of guarding your judgments, of reframing obstacles, of returning to your principles. Seneca captured that spirit of steadfastness. He wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Your challenges aren't interruptions, they're the polishing grit. They're the very friction that smooths your rough edges and reveals your true strength. So this journey through Stoic wisdom, it isn't a promise of a life without storms. That life doesn't exist. It's an invitation to learn how to navigate any storm with an unwavering inner calm. It's about building a ship so sound in its construction that no wave can break it. The waves can only test it, so where do you begin? The work isn't in memorizing 20 points. It's in living one or two. This week, choose a single discipline. One that resonates with your life right now. Maybe it's the practice of withholding judgment on a daily irritation, or the mental exercise of the view from above when a worry feels too large. Or it could be a simple act of voluntary discomfort, a cold shower, skipping a habitual comfort. Work with that one practice. Observe its effects on your mind. See how it shifts your experience of a difficult moment, and if you feel moved to, share what you discover. Your insight might be the very thing that helps another person find their footing. We build this unbreakable character not in isolation, but as a community of practice, learning from the ancient past to build a more resilient present.